The stipulations in this bill that are required to protect someone from prosecution are: number one, you're in a place you have a legal right to be. Number two, you are not the aggressor. Number three, a felony crime is about to be or has been committed on you or someone else. And number four, you have imminent fear of great bodily harm or death. Michael was in his own home. David came to Michael's front door and carried out his verbal threat of attack within seconds of arrival. David had already committed a felony aggravated assault on Michael, and Michael had already suffered great bodily harm. All that was left for him to have imminent fear of was death. Law enforcement and the prosecution refused to acknowledge this felony crime committed on Michael or me as a witness. Detective Dave McCarley, the only officer that talked to me at the scene, turned me away while I was sitting right there in the police department that morning by telling me there was nothing else I could do for him today. When I asked if he could tell me what the charges were, David McCarley told me there are no definite charges yet. All the witnesses are drunk and we are waiting for them to sober up before we talk to them. Yet Detective McCarley turned me away knowing that I was the only one who had not been drinking. When Michael was released from the University of Mississippi Medical Center, he was taken directly to the Pearl, Mississippi Police Department. Sergeant Brian Ellis, who did not arrive on the scene until after Michael and David had been transported to the hospital, asked Michael, who had just 5 hours earlier had been violently attacked, suffered a blow to the head, had been given multiple doses of morphine and Ativan IV in the ER, "You want to tell me what happened?" When Michael asked for attorney, Sergeant Brian Ellis immediately cuffed him and placed him under arrest for murder. 6 hours and 20 minutes after Michael was violently attacked at his front door, Sergeant Brian Ellis, who did not arrive on the scene until he was taken away, was sitting in the middle of what he was calling a crime scene with Detective Dave McCarley watching Michael's TV while the crime scene was being videoed, who had talked to only one of the 3 drunk witnesses, who had turned away the only sober witness from the police department without asking for a statement, and had not received even one report from the 5 responding officers, issued a warrant for murder for Michael, and he was booked into the Rankin County Jail on a $2 million bond. Michael was held in the male detox cell by the guard station for 3 weeks because his injuries were too severe to put him in general population. He could not even get up to eat or use the bathroom without one of the detoxing inmates helping him up. He was denied his pain medication prescribed by the ER doctor for 3 days because they told him they were not a medical facility and not allowed to dispense this medication prescribed to him. The defense attorney, Don Leland, filed a motion to dismiss on grounds of Mississippi Stand Your Ground Castle doctrine. During this hearing, the defense attorney submitted the memo brief in support of motion to null process, along with the crime scene photos taken by the Pearl Police Department of Michael that he had found purely by accident, which had been withheld by the prosecution. Judge William Chapman ignored the felony crime that had been committed on Michael at his front door and the fact that the photos had been withheld from the defense, and denied the motion to dismiss. His only comment about the photos that were about the photos, that was something to the effect of he had seen worse. For 3 years, this victim refused to accept a plea bargain. So the week before trial was to start, the prosecution amended the indictment to habitual, which would mean automatic life without parole if by chance he were convicted by a jury, because of some trouble Michael had gotten into over 30 years ago when he was a teenager. Even though the prosecution did this legally, it was more than obvious that this was done to try and force a plea bargain from the real victim, and not for the reason that this habitual law exists, the protection of society. They could have indicted under the habitual or made an amendment at any time during the 3 years it took to go to trial, but they waited until the week before trial was to start to make this amendment. Because of some critical medical issues, understandable fragmented memory of the incident, and the last-minute amendment to the indictment, this victim made a best interest plea which admits no guilt under duress to manslaughter the day trial was to start. On June the 30th, 2011, Judge William Chapman sentenced Mike Lindsay to a term of 20 years in prison under a manslaughter best interest plea, which admits no guilt. This is the max sentence allowed by law. Judge Chapman told Michael Lindsay, because you selfishly stabbed Dave in order to get what you wanted, an ambulance, because you have long hair, because you have hepatitis C, a chronic illness which the state of Mississippi has declared Michael legally disabled because of, and you have drank and drugged all those years. Part of your punishment is for that, and the other part is for the protection of society. His attorney, Don Leland, said of Mike's sentence, "It broke my heart. I nearly broke down and cried. It was a horrible injustice." He went on to say his characterization of Mike is so unlike that boy, and regardless of Mike's past, it still does not give someone the right to come to your house and try to kill you. He outweighed Mike by 87 pounds and was 16 years younger. I don't care if you have long hair or sick, black, white, red, or green. Those factors should have nothing to do with your sentence. Because I was the eyewitness to the worst thing I could have ever imagined in my worst nightmare, which has been totally ignored by those I was taught all my life were there to protect me. I will never give up my fight to see justice served for the real victim of a felony crime. There needs to be a place for people to go for help when they are victims of corruption. Legislature needs to look into this wrongful conviction of the real victim of a felony crime. Felony crimes were ignored, Mississippi laws were ignored, and have Governor Phil Bryant issue a full pardon. My name is Lynda Barnett. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm here to tell you about the wrongful conviction of Michael Lindsay.
Okay. How do you know about it? How do you know about it?
Oh, you want me to do
I want
it?
you to tell the story. I want you to tell us what happened. Looking at me.
Looking at you.
From your memory, yeah.
I was the eyewitness to the felony aggravated assault on Michael Lindsay at his front door on January the 27th, 2008.
What'd you see?
A neighbor came to Michael's front door yelling for him to come outside. When he got out there, the neighbor hit him on the head with a bottle, took what was left of the bottle, grinding it into his face while kicking him in the side. Michael was yelling for someone to call 911 the whole time. I'm lost now. I'm telling you, I drift.
You saw this with your own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Did Michael do anything to precipitate this? Did he?
No, he went outside trying to find out what Dave's problem was, and he carried out the threat that he was going to kick his ass.
And did he say why he was going to kick his ass?
Being disrespectful to his wife, because his wife had come to the house earlier that day asking if they had a beer for Dave, and because these neighbors bummed all the time, he was a stay-at-home dad, and she had just gotten fired from the Bunny Bread store. So, and Michael, just because another neighbor was there fussing about them bumming, Michael looked at her and said, all the free stuff's gone from here. You need to go to the store down the street. So I guess he sat and fumed all day because they would not give him beer.
And so you're there at the house,
Uh-huh.
at the trailer?
Right.
Okay. And so Michael's yelling to call 911?
Yeah, he was yelling for his roommate to get out there. He had already been attacked by the time we got out there.
Did you actually see the attack?
Not the first one.
Okay.
He was already hurt. He said, he got me good, call 911. And at that time...
So tell me what you saw, and take me through what you saw from the first time you saw him, and what you heard.
He was standing at the bottom of the steps, bent over, and I walked up and put my hand on his back, and I said, Mike, and he raised up, like, turned his head, and blood just slung all over, and he said, he got me good, call 911.
Okay.
And at that time, his roommate stepped behind him and grabbed him, and I saw Dave's hand grab his shirt like this, and they were playing tug. His roommate was trying to pull him away, and Dave would pull him back, and they were going, and his roommate was yelling for Stephen Booth, the neighbor's son that had come with Dave, to hold Dave, that he had Michael. And Stephen said, no, let him go, Dave's kicking Mike's ass, let him go. And Mike screamed again for me to call 911. So I ran to the neighbors trying to wake them up, because I couldn't get back inside because he was being attacked at the front door. So while I was gone, Michael was able to get away from his attacker, and it stabbed him one single time to disable him. And at that time, Dave, the attacker's girlfriend, pulled her phone out and called 911.
Okay, so you didn't see the stabbing?
I didn't. None of them saw it. They were all standing right there, and nobody. His roommate said that Dave said, the SOB just stabbed me.
Okay. All right, so take us through what happened next.
Okay.
So you come out and you...
Right. I headed back over there, and the first neighbor that I was not able to wake up was sitting on the front porch, and his son was the one that was down there with Dave. And I said, oh, Greg, I don't know how bad it is down there. And he told me that Mike had stabbed Dave, because I was thinking that Michael might be dead when I got back. And he said that Mike had stabbed Dave, and it was pretty bad down there, and that I didn't need to go back. So I sat on the front porch with him until the ambulances finally got there, after it was 40 to 45 minutes. And when they left, I walked back down there, and Detective Dave McCarley met me at the street and asked me if I was Lynda. And asked me to write down what I'd seen. So I went to the hospital where Michael was, and the girlfriend went. When I got to the hospital, Michael said, when I walked in the room, he looked at me and he said, "They told me I killed Dave, did I?" And I just shook my head. And so when he was released, they took him to the Pearl Police Department, told me there was nothing else I could do for him today, and placed him under arrest for murder.
You said the detective asked you to do a written statement, did you?
Yeah, and I thought in my written statement that I told him more than what I did. The ambulances, I was sitting under a street light without my glasses, and the ambulances were pulling out. And I still don't know. I know Mike's not dead, but I don't know how serious he is. And my written statement was very vague. It said something like Dave had come yelling for Mike to come out and had attacked him, and I'd gone to get somebody to call 911, and that was it. But that was the only thing, and they never acknowledged after that point. The detective that I talked to and that took this written statement, when the prosecution released their evidence, this detective, he talked to me, the only sober witness. He processed the scene with the arresting officer. He bagged every piece of evidence and was present when the arrest was made, and he don't have a report.
Did they ever take an oral statement from you? Never?
Never.
No prosecuting attorney ever spoke with you?
Mm-mm.
And you're one of the few witnesses to what took place?
But I witnessed the attack on Mike. I didn't witness him stabbing Dave. They refused to acknowledge the crime that I witnessed in order to prosecute him, so they didn't need me.
Well, they didn't want you.
That's right. And the reason Dave McCarley's report is probably not included, because his report backs up everything that I said. An investigator that touched every piece of evidence don't have a report.
Right, so what happened at the trial? Were you there?
Yes. Mike made a best interest plea to manslaughter.
Right. He didn't actually go to trial?
Mm-mm.
Tell us what happened.
He was sick from interferon treatments. The judge, when he made his plea, the judge revoked his bond, told his attorney there was a new statute that required him to revoke the bond and hold him in jail until sentencing, which his attorney told me that he checked the statute and it does not say that. They put him in the Rankin County Jail, took him off of his medications that were to control the side effects of the interferon treatment. He was having seizures because he was taken off of the medication without being weaned off of it. He was having hallucinations, which are a side effect of the interferon that this other medication were controlling, and stood him up in front of a judge to try to explain what happened for an event that he don't have full memory of himself.
Right. Tell me about the pictures you've got.
These are crime scene photos taken by Pearl, Mississippi Police Department that were withheld from the defense by the prosecution when they released their evidence.
Now, is this the man who was killed?
No, this is Michael. Police reports say that Michael was, when they arrived on the scene, that Michael was laying on the ground covered in blood, and that his attacker was laying on the ground with a stab wound to his right side. He was alert and talking to them when they arrived on the scene and slowly deteriorated, waiting on medical to respond to take him to a hospital that was only 2 miles away. This is the booking photo taken 6 hours after the attack, which is not very clear. It looks like they were trying to cover the injuries. He's wearing 2 hospital gowns because when he was released, he didn't have on anything in his underwear and didn't know where his clothes were. His shirt had been ripped off by the attacker, which I witnessed, and I found out later that the paramedics had cut his jeans off because trying to find out where all of his injuries were. AMR patient care report says question of gunshot wound, even though patient denies guns were involved. And the attending physician at the emergency room, her report says the same thing. Question of gunshot wound, even though patient denies guns were involved. It was listed as a priority 1 life threat on American Medical Response patient care report.
Right, so he was at risk of dying.
He was a priority 1 life threat.
Explain that.
It means that he was at risk of not making it himself from their observation of his injuries.
All right, so the ambulance people say this guy could die.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that was, they didn't want to let him use any of that.
Mm-mm.
And never even took your story.
Mm-mm. And we don't have an AMR report on the other guy. We don't have his hospital report. The only evidence we got was the police reports, the written statements from the witnesses. We don't even have a copy. They didn't give the video recorded statements. The attorney had to go back and ask them for them. So we had to postpone the first trial date because we couldn't get them. When he finally got the videos, they were locked and he couldn't access them on his computer. So after his computer guy had done everything he could trying to unlock the videos so we could watch them, he had to go back to the police department and get them to unlock them on his computer. He was standing over the guy, the officer that was working on unlocking them, and he was running through the evidence. That's when he ran across these pictures. When the guy was flipping through the evidence on the computer, he saw those and he said, "Hey, wait a minute. I hadn't seen those photos. Go back." So that's how these came about. By accident. If they had not locked the videos, we would have never found out these photos existed.
So not only did they not allow that to be a factor in the charges, they just flat hid him from the victim,
Right.
and his attorney.
Right.
I mean, he didn't know what condition he was in.
Right. When his roommate went to give a statement, Mike was still at the hospital. He asked how Mike was. The arresting officer said, "Oh, he just got a couple of stitches on his forehead where he hit him with the bottle," which alone is a felony crime. Still.
What else do you know about his injuries?
He had a large hematoma on his forehead with a 2-centimeter laceration. He had a 1 centimeter over his eyebrow. He had a 1 centimeter on his left cheek, and a 4 centimeter laceration under his nose and up the side, full thickness, with a 1 centimeter laceration into the gingiva. They picked pieces of beer bottle out of the roof of his mouth. He had a large hematoma on his left flank side, which is his side, and 2 broken ribs and partial collapse of both lungs. The arresting officer never acknowledged his appearance when making an arrest for murder. Never acknowledged that he was sitting in front of him with over 50 stitches in his face in 2 hospital gowns. His hair stiff. His hair sticking out because it's stiff with dried blood. This case Michael should never have been arrested according to Mississippi law. He should have never been prosecuted. Evidence was withheld. I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm lost again. Because, see, I don't know what all the witnesses said. They claim that their main reason for the arrest and prosecution was because of his roommate's statement. And I heard like the first 3 minutes of his roommate's statement. And he was saying, it all happened so fast, I can't remember everything. But he was the main reason that he was being prosecuted. My mind is going blank, Bill. Rankin County, Mississippi ignores felony crimes. They ignore Mississippi laws, and they do this all in order to prosecute the victim of a felony crime for their political gain. I was always taught that the police were there to protect me if I ever was in danger, that's who I called. And after this, I feel like I've been misled my whole life, because all they did was pick up on the attack where this attacker they failed to accomplish was take the rest of his life, whether it be killing him, which the attacker could have done, or put him in prison. You know, they just, I have no faith in the police. I actually have panic attacks if I see a police car anywhere near me, because I know the power that they have, and I know that they're not going to be held accountable for any abuse of power that they use. And I thought that once we got an attorney and the attorney presented the evidence to the DA, that it would be corrected. And all they did was carry on with what the police were already doing, all the way to the judge. And he was sentenced because of his appearance. He was sentenced for a disability that the state of Mississippi says he's totally disabled because of.